That's Miss Cora's mare. Come home without her. Come home without her. Saddle's empty. She's out in it then. I'll pay double to the man who rides. No wage spends on a dead man. No wage spends on a dead man. He rides in, he don't ride out. I don't want you here. I know it. Wasn't asking. I'll pay you. Whatever you name. You've got nothing I want, Mr. Harding. Never did. That man owes me nothing. Why would he ride into that? Reckon he ain't aiming to come back, Mr. Harding.
A horse came home without her. It came down the north trail at a stumbling walk, reins dragging, saddle crusted white, and it stopped at the gate, the way a horse stops when it no longer knows what it is carrying. The sky behind it was the color of a fresh bruise. In the yard, 6 men who drew wages from the Harding ranch stood in a loose ring and looked hard at their own boots. Not one of them looked at the empty saddle. Not one of them looked north. And the wind that came off that ridge already carried the smell of a storm that would kill a man in the open before he could say his own name twice. Cora Harding was somewhere out under that sky. That was the plain fact the horse had brought home, and no one in the yard would say it out loud, as if saying it would make it true faster. She had ridden out before noon to bring in a straggling heifer, a thing she had done 100 times, and the weather had turned the way weather turns in the Dakotas in January of 1888, without permission, without mercy, all at once. Her brother stood on the porch with his hands wrapped around a coffee cup gone cold. Mr. Harding was a big man, a cattle baron in the way the newspapers meant it, and he owned more head than any 3 ranches between here and the Missouri. He owned the horses these men rode and the roofs they slept under. He looked at the 6 of them, and he said the word that a man with money always believes will work. I'll pay double to the man who rides. Nobody moved. A hired man named Ott spat into the snow and said what all of them were thinking. No wage spends on a dead man, Mr. Harding. That's a 36-hour storm coming. Easy. A man rides into that, he don't ride out. The others nodded at their boots. They were good men, most of them, and they had families, and they knew exactly what the white would do to a rider it caught alone. Fear like that is not cowardice. It is arithmetic. That was when the 7th man came around the corner of the barn, leading his own horse, already saddled. He was not one of Harding's men. He worked the fence lines for whoever would feed him, drifting from ranch to ranch through the seasons. A line rider with no land under him, and no name that opened any door. Callum was what men called him, and mostly they did not call him anything at all. He had a bedroll, a rifle, a good horse, and the reputation of a man who kept to himself so completely that people forgot he was near until he spoke. He was near now. He tightened his cinch in the failing light, and did not look at the porch. His hands were bare in the cold, because he had learned long ago that a man cannot tie a knot in mittens, and his knuckles had gone the raw red that comes before they go white. He had been a mile off, coiling wire, when he saw the riderless horse come down the trail, and he had turned his own mount and come at a lope, and by the time he reached the yard, he had already made the only decision he intended to make. Harding came down 2 steps of the porch. "You," he said, and there was a whole history in how he said it. "I don't want you on my land." "I know it," Callum said. He swung up into the saddle. The horse stamped and blew a plume of white. "Wasn't asking." "I'll pay you," Harding said, because it was the only tongue he had. "Whatever you name." Callum looked at him then, one long look, and there was no heat in it, and no forgiveness either. "You've got nothing I want, Mr. Harding," he said. "Never did." And he turned the horse's head to the north and rode out through the gate into the coming white. And within 100 yards the storm had taken the shape of him and folded it under, and the men in the yard could no longer tell where the trail was, let alone the rider on it. To understand why a man who owed the Hardings nothing would spend his life on their behalf, you have to go back 2 winters, to a softer season, when the same yard was thick with mud and green promise, and a woman stood at that gate who had already decided the town was finished with her. Cora Harding was 39 years old that spring, and the town had entered its verdict on her long before. Spinster, they said, when they thought she could not hear, and sometimes when they knew she could. She was not a small woman nor a fashionable one. She had wide, capable hands and a full figure that the town's tighter wives sniffed at, and she had run her brother's household books for 11 years without once being thanked in a way that cost him anything. She had refused 2 suitors early, when she was young and had reasons, and after that the offers stopped, and the town decided her worth was settled and low. But there was a thing about Cora Harding that the town never bothered to see, being too busy with its verdict. She was kind in the specific, unshowy way of people who have been overlooked and know exactly how it feels. She kept a jar of hard candy for the children who came with their mothers to settle accounts. She remembered which of the hired men had a sick wife and which had none, and in the ledger of her own heart, kept in a hand no one ever read, she had long ago stopped expecting to be chosen and had made a quiet peace with that, the way you make peace with a bad knee. Callum had come to the ranch that spring to ride fence. He was leaner then and quieter, if that was possible, and he did his work and drew his pay and kept his eyes down. But he had a way of being where a hard job was, without being asked, and of doing it before anyone thought to. When the well rope frayed, it was mended before Cora noticed. When a rattler got into the hen house, it was already dead and gone by morning. She began to notice the absence of trouble around her, and then she began to notice the man, in whose wake the trouble kept disappearing. They spoke first over a broken pump handle. She had come out to work it and found it hanging useless, and he was there within the hour with a length of iron, and while he worked she stayed, which she did not have to do, and they talked about nothing: the weather, the price of feed, a hawk turning over the north pasture. He was not smooth. He said a thing and then went quiet, as if regretting it. But he looked at her when she spoke, full at her face, and not past it, and no man had done that in longer than she wanted to count. It went on like that through the summer, a courtship so slow neither of them would have used the word. A word here, a gift of the season's first ripe tomato, left on the porch rail without a note, because a note would have been too much to say. He began to write to her when the fence work took him to the far quarters for days at a stretch. Short letters in a careful, blocky hand, telling her small, true things, the shape of a coyote's track, a line of geese, the way he had thought of her when he saw a certain wildflower he could not name. She kept everyone in a tin box under her bed, and she did not tell a living soul. Her brother found out the way brothers always find out, through a hired man's loose talk, and Mr. Harding did the arithmetic he always did. A line rider with no land, no name, no herd, sniffing after his sister, who managed his accounts and asked for nothing and would, if she married, take her competence and her labor into some sod hut on rented ground. He saw a thief. He did not see a man. He rode out to the far fence himself, with 2 hands at his back, and he found Callum coiling wire in the last light. "You'll draw your pay and go," Harding said, "and you'll not write to her again, and you'll not come to this gate. She's had your measure, and she wants none of it. She told me so herself." That last was a lie, built to break the thing at the root, and Harding told it without a flicker, the way a man tells a lie he has decided is a kindness. Callum stood a long moment with the wire in his raw hands. He was a man who had learned, young and hard, the exact size of what the world would grant him, and it was not much, and it was never a woman like her. "A man with nothing," he said finally, quiet, more to himself than to Harding, "has no right to want." He believed it. That was the wound in him, older than the Hardings, the belief that his own empty hands disqualified him from reaching. He drew his pay the next morning and rode off the Harding land, and did not go to the gate, and he did not write again, because he had been told she had refused him, and he had no reason on earth to doubt it. What Callum never knew, riding away, was that Cora had refused nothing. She had not been asked and had not been told. Her brother had come to her that same night and said only that the line rider had moved on with the season, the way line riders do, and had left no word. And Cora, who had made her peace long ago with not being chosen, folded that in with all the other times, and told herself she had been a fool to think this one was different, and she took the tin box out from under her bed and could not bring herself to burn it. She tied the letters with a bit of string and put them in the deep inner pocket of her winter coat, over her heart, where a thing goes when you cannot keep it and cannot let it go. 2 winters passed. Callum drifted the fence lines of the county, and a strange thing began to happen on the ranches nearest the Harding spread. A thing the hands talked about over cards without ever landing on the truth of it. There was a line shack at the north edge of the Harding range, a half-fallen thing used in autumn for the gather and abandoned all winter. That was the shack. And through 2 hard winters, someone kept it stocked. Not lavishly, that would have drawn eyes, but a stranger caught out in weather would find split wood stacked dry under the eave, and a tin of matches kept from the damp, and hardtack and a twist of coffee in a sealed crock, and a wool blanket folded on the bunk that smelled of nothing but cold and cedar. Nobody claimed it. Harding's foreman assumed the boss had ordered it and never asked. The boss never noticed the shack existed. It was Callum. On his drift through the county, he passed that country every few weeks, and each time he left a little more, split from deadfall on land that was no one's, carried in on his own horse, asked of no one, and told to no one. He could not have said cleanly why. If you had pressed him, he would have muttered something about a man never knowing when he'd need a dry roof himself, which was true, and was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that the shack sat on the edge of her land, and stalking it was the only way left to him of standing near her without any right to. He gave to the thing on the border of her life because he was not permitted the thing itself. He never once imagined she would be the one to need it. The January storm of 1888 came the way those men had feared, and worse. It began as a fine, bright morning, deceiving, warm enough that children walked to their schoolhouses in light coats across 3 territories, which is why the history books would later name it for the children it took. Then, in an hour, the temperature fell so far and so fast that the moisture in the air turned to needles, and a wall of white came down out of the northwest at the speed of a running horse, and the world simply disappeared. A man could not see his own outstretched hand. He could not tell up from down in it. Cattle froze standing, and Cora Harding was 2 miles from any wall, bent low over her mare, trying to read a ground she could no longer see. She had gone after the heifer at mid-morning under that lying blue sky. By the time the white hit, she was too far out to run for the house, and she knew it in the first minute, the way ranch-raised people know weather in their bones. She turned the mare and gave it its head, trusting the animal to find home, and for a while it walked steady into the wind. Then it balked at a drift and stumbled and threw her, and she came down hard in snow that was already knee-deep, and when she got up, the mare was gone into the white, and the sound of it was gone too. She was alone, on foot, with the frost already forming on the inside of her own eyelashes, so that blinking hurt, and the last of the day draining out of a sky she could not even see. She did the only thing there was. She got the wind at her back, because a person walking into that wind dies faster, and she went with it, downhill, on the theory that downhill led to the creek and the creek led somewhere. She fell and rose and fell. She lost the feeling in her feet and then, worse, stopped minding that she had lost it. She was a practical woman even then. She understood with terrible clarity that she was very likely going to die out here, and that the town would say she had been foolish to ride out, and that her brother would grieve in the loud way of men who confuse owning a thing with loving it. Her hand, going numb, found the lump over her heart through her coat, the bundle of letters, and she held it, and she walked. Back in the yard, the riderless mare had come home before Cora ever could, and the arithmetic of the hands had held, and only one man had ridden out. Callum went north into the white, with the wind hard on his right cheek, and he did not gallop, because a galloped horse in a blizzard is a dead horse in 10 minutes. He walked his horse, and he trusted the country he had ridden 2 winters, and he counted fence posts he could not see by the memory in his own hands, and he aimed himself, without letting his mind say it plainly, at the one dry roof on the north edge of her land. He nearly rode past her. She was a shape no different from the drifts, down and still, 30 yards off the sunken creek line, and it was the mare's own trail, a churn already half filled, that turned him. He found her curled on her side, with the snow building a shroud along her back, and her arms folded tight over her chest, as if guarding something, and for one black moment, he was certain he had come to fetch a body. He got down. His own boots left prints that began filling before he lifted the next foot. He put his bare hand against her cheek, and it was cold, and then, faint, under the cold, there was breath. Cora. He said her name for the first time in 2 years, and it tore out of him rough. Her eyes came open a crack, glazed, not knowing him, and her lips moved without sound. He did not wait for more. He got her up across the saddle, and himself up behind, and he wrapped his coat around the both of them, and turned the horse the last half-mile toward the shack by memory alone, talking to her the whole way, in a low, steady voice, saying anything, saying her name, saying stay, because a person on the edge of the cold sleep will sometimes hold to a voice when they will hold to nothing else. The shack rose up out of the white like something dreamed. He got the door open against the drift and carried her in over his shoulder, and inside was the dark and the sudden blessing of stillness. The wind shut to a howl on the far side of the boards. There was the wood he had split, months ago, for no reason he had let himself name. There were the matches kept dry. There was the blanket. His own frost-bitten fingers, clumsy now, struck 3 matches before one caught, and the little iron stove took the kindling, and the first real light in that place fell across the woman he had been told, 2 years before, wanted nothing to do with him. These stories are made with love, and telling them slowly is the whole of the work. The small hours, the long roads, the hands that give without being asked. If it is holding you the way the cold held her, stay with me to the end of it. He worked over her the way a man works to save a life, with no room in him for anything but the task. He got the wet outer things off her, and the blanket around her, and her feet, white and terrible, into his own hands against his own belly, under his shirt, to lend her his heat, because that was the way it was done. He rubbed the blood back toward her fingers. He had a tin of tallow and camphor in his kit, and he worked it into the frostbit places, her cheeks, her ears, the backs of her hands, his own cracked knuckles smearing it clumsy and gentle. All the while the storm leaned on the little building and did not let up, and the night stretched out ahead of them long as a life, and there was one cup, which he filled with melted snow, and warmed on the stove, and held to her lips, and drank from himself, and filled again, and held to her lips, back and forth. One cup passed between them in the dark. Somewhere in the deep of that night, she came up enough to know where she was, and to know who was holding the cup. Her eyes found his face in the stove light and held it, and something crossed them that was not fever. "You," she said, the same word her brother had thrown at him in the yard, but from her mouth it was a different thing entirely, soft and disbelieving. "You came." "Hush," he said. "Drink." "They wouldn't come," she said. Her voice was a thread. "My brother's men. I heard him. He was going to pay them." She was not asking. She was fitting a thing together in the dark. "And you came. You've got no reason on this earth to come for me." Callum was quiet a long moment, feeding a stick to the fire so he would not have to look at her. "Reasons don't seem to signify much," he said finally, "in a storm like this one." It was as close as he could come to the truth, which he still did not believe he had any right to say aloud. He tucked the blanket closer. He thought she had gone back under, and he let his guard down, and he let himself look at her sleeping face, the way he had not let himself look at anything in 2 years. It was while he was shifting her, easing a cramp out of her shoulder, that his hand found the hard lump in the inner pocket of her coat, where it hung drying by the stove. He thought it a book, or a flask, something that might do her harm pressed against her ribs, and he drew it out to set it aside. The string, rotted a little with 2 years of being carried, gave in his fingers, and the bundle came apart and fell across his knee and onto the floor by the firelight. A dozen letters and more, worn soft at the folds, each one addressed in a careful, blocky hand he knew better than his own face. His hand, his letters, every one he had ever sent her, kept. He knelt there and did not understand it. He turned one over, and the seal on it was unbroken, and another, unbroken. She had carried them 2 years over her heart and never opened a single one. He knelt in the firelight with the proof of a thing he could not read the shape of, his mind going in slow circles. She kept them. She never read them. She kept them. And the storm screamed on the roof, and behind him, Cora had come awake again and was watching him hold his own letters in his frost-bitten hands. "I couldn't read them," she said. He turned. Her eyes were wet, and her voice steadied itself the way a proud woman's voice does. "I want you to understand that before you think anything cruel of me, Robert told me you'd gone off with the season and left no word. So I put them away sealed, because if I read them, I'd have to know exactly what I'd lost. And I didn't think I could carry that and go on keeping his books and pouring his coffee." She stopped. "But I couldn't burn them either, so I carried them, for 2 years. Sealed, like a fool." "You didn't refuse me," Callum said. The words came out of him strange and slow, as if he were learning them. "Refuse you?" She almost laughed, and it broke. "You never gave me the chance. You just went." And there it was between them at last, the lie her brother had built, standing up plain in the firelight, where neither of them could pretend around it. And the storm held them both in that one small room, where there was nowhere left to look but at the truth and at each other. The storm blew itself out near dawn of the second day, 36 hours from the first white wall, and left behind it the particular silence that follows such a thing. A silence so complete and so bright it feels holy, the whole world scoured white and blue and stunned. And into that silence, when the drifts had settled enough to break a horse through, came riders from the Harding spread, following the only trail there was to follow, the churned north track of a man who had ridden into the killing white after a woman he had every reason to leave to it. Mr. Harding was at the front of them. He had not slept. He had spent the night believing his sister dead and believing, somewhere lower, that he had helped to kill her. And a night like that changes the color of a man's certainties. He came off his horse at the shack door with his face gray and his hands shaking, and when the door opened and there was Cora, wrapped in a blanket, alive, sitting up by a warm stove with color in her cheeks, the sound that came out of him was not a word at all. But she did not run to him. That was the thing the hands behind him would talk about for years. She stayed where she was, and she looked at her brother across the little room, and the letters were spread on the table beside her now, in the plain morning light, the careful hand on them visible to every man in the doorway. "Robert," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Tell them, tell all of them, out loud, what you did. Tell them whose word it was that sent him off. Because it was not mine, and they've all had 2 years of thinking me a hard old maid who turned a good man down, and I am done being the story you told to keep me at your books." Harding looked at the letters. He looked at Callum, who stood by the stove and said nothing, who had never once demanded a thing of him. He looked at his sister's face, which he had known for 39 years and had never truly troubled to read. The men were watching, and a man who has spent one whole night learning what his control had nearly cost found that he no longer had the stomach for the lie. "She never refused him," Harding said. The words came out of him like teeth pulled. "He never left of his own want. I ran him off. I told him she'd turned him down, and I told her he'd drifted off without a word. Both were lies. I did it because," and here the cattle baron's voice failed him, and he finished small, "because I didn't want to lose her keeping. God forgive me. I called it protecting her. It was owning her." Nobody in that doorway spoke. Out in the white yard, a man took his hat off, and then the man beside him did, and it moved down the line of them like something in church, hats coming off in the cold before a woman who had been carried out of a grave and had refused to be lied about a single day longer. Cora sat very straight and let them see her. She had kept her dignity through 2 years of the town's low verdict, and she kept it now, in the hour the verdict was overturned. And she did not gloat, and she did not weep. She only looked at Callum. And Callum, who all this while had believed that a man with empty hands had no right to want, stood in the light of the truth and found the old belief could not hold its shape anymore. Because here was the plain fact of it. laid out where a blind man could read it. She had kept his letters when she thought him gone, and thought herself refused. She had carried his words over her heart for 2 years, with nothing in it for her. No land, no name, no promise, no hope even. She had chosen him, with her whole stubborn heart, before she knew he had ever chosen her back, before she knew a single word inside those sealed pages, before the storm, before he rode out. She had chosen him when he was nothing to gain, and everything to grieve. "I've got no land," he said to her, low, in front of all of them, because it had to be said plain, and it had to be said now. "No herd, no name worth the saying. I've got a horse, and a bedroll, and 2 frostbit hands. I never wrote again, because I believed a man with nothing had no right to ask a woman like you for anything at all." "You've got wrong then," Cora said, "and you've had it wrong for 2 years." She reached out one bandaged hand across the little table, across the letters, and let it lie there open between them. "I don't want your land. I never wanted anybody's land. I've got a brother with too much of it, and look what it made of him. I wanted the man who mended the pump before I asked, and left the first tomato on the rail, with no note, because he hadn't the nerve. I chose that man when I thought he was gone forever, and I'd nothing to gain by it. That's the only kind of choosing that's worth a thing, Callum. Not the kind that counts what's in your hands. The kind that's made before you know how it comes out." He crossed the room and took her open hand in both of his ruined ones, careful of the frostbite. And he did not kiss her, not there in front of her brother and the hatless men, because they were both of them people who kept the deepest things quiet. He only held her hand and bowed his head over it, and that was more than the town had ever seen him give anyone, and it was enough. It was everything. They were married that spring, when the same country that had tried to kill her went green and soft again, in the little church in town where the same wives who had sniffed at her figure now dabbed their eyes and told each other they had always known she was worth choosing. Harding gave her away, changed and quieter. A man learning late that a thing held too tight is a thing already lost. He had signed over the North Quarter to her outright, the poor scoured country where the shack still stood. And Cora and Callum built their house within sight of it and never once tore it down. She kept the letters. She untied the string one evening that first married winter, by their own stove, and read them at last, one by one, aloud, in her own voice, with the man who had written them sitting close enough to touch. The coyote tracks, the line of geese, the wildflower he had never learned to name. She read them slow, over many nights, in no hurry now, because they had all the nights there were. And sometimes, reading, she would stop and put her hand over the page, and he would understand, and they would sit in the quiet a while and let it be full. For the rest of their long lives together, when folks asked Cora Harding how she had come to marry a man with nothing, when she might have had her pick of the county's landed sons, she gave the same answer, and she gave it plain. She would say that most people wait to be chosen until they know it is safe, until they can count what is in the other's hands, and be sure of the sum. And then she would say the truest thing she knew, the thing the storm had taught her and the sealed letters had kept, that the only love that ever proves itself is the love that is given before it is known, chosen in the dark, with the wind at the door, when there is nothing at all to gain but the other soul beside you. She had been chosen so, and she had chosen so, and neither of them had known.